Still looking up.
Welcome back to the Bluegrass Breakdown, where Matt just depressed us all.
Yeah.
But we have Glenn Logan from AseaBlue.com. Welcome to the show, Glenn.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we wanted to, obviously we want to talk to you. Kentucky's obviously having a great season, only losing one game so far. What is the future kind of? I mean, SEC wise at least. Is there anybody that can beat Kentucky right now in the SEC that you see?
Oh, well, yeah, I think there's a couple of teams. Obviously, you got to think that Mississippi State and Florida both have a chance at their place. Ken Pomeroy's blog or ratings, whatever, he kind of gives us a pretty high probability of winning out. Well, not now. It's down now to 50.9% chance of winning out. But I'll take even odds to win out. That's pretty good stuff. And I'm just talking about up until the SEC tournament. But, yeah, we've got two teams on the horizon that could potentially jump up and bite us if we don't bring our best. We're favored to win both those games, and I think we should be. This basketball team is without a doubt it's probably the best defensive team since the Suffolcats in 2003. And this is it's just an amazing thing to watch these guys, how well they've been able to play together. And, it amazes me still after 3 years. I've seen it for 3 straight years, but it still amazes me how John Calipari can not only bring these young stars in and make them accept their roles rather than being, the talk of the town. And as well as that, it amazes me how he can get these guys to play defense the way they do when they're just not used to doing it whatsoever, where they came from. So I think to answer your general question, yeah, I think we'll go through and win it all anyway in all probability, but I think there's a couple of teams that can do us in.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd here, Glenn. I was listening to what you said about Mississippi State and Florida on the road. I would agree. I was thinking that we play, obviously, Vanderbilt and Florida twice, and then Mississippi State once. Out of those 5 games, I was thinking before SEC play, we would lose one of those, and that being to Mississippi State at Mississippi State, just because it's a different type of matchup. They have a point guard in D. Boss that could give Marcus Teague some issues. I mean, they're a great shooting team as well. So out of those, I did see maybe Mississippi State pulling one out. But other than that, the way we've been going, 10-0 so far, and what we got ahead of us in Ole Miss this Saturday, I really do expect that to be kind of one of those wash games. If we get to Mississippi State, I wouldn't be surprised if this team went 16-0 as we did with Bogans and Gerald Fitchback a couple years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that makes sense, Tyler. I think it's back in what was it? I guess it was 2003 or 2004, whenever it was, when we went all the way through the SEC and we went through the tournament and won every game up until the loss there against Marquette in the grade 8 or the Elite 8, however we call it these days. That team kind of reminds me a lot of this team in a lot of different ways. This team, I think, is much better because obviously it's quite a bit more talented. That team was older and more experienced, and they kind of found their, mojo there at Vanderbilt on the road that year, and they just never let go of it, and they just grabbed everybody by the throat. This team is doing something similar, although they've done it a little differently. They've kind of beaten people, not terribly convincingly for the first half of the season, and now they seem to be really playing good, although Vanderbilt gave us a bit of a rough time down there. But that's hardly something to be critical about. Those guys are tough in that gym, and that gym's a nightmare to play in. But I think you're absolutely right. I think Mississippi State is is the only team really left on our schedule that actually matches up with us with any kind of favorable way. Florida, we already know the matchups are really bad for them. I mean, their team is good, but we're just one of those teams that they just match up very poorly against. Mississippi State matches up much better against us.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're a guard-laden team as Florida. You kind of hit on my next question about going down into Nashville and getting a big win at Memorial. Obviously, Kentucky was up in the first half by about 13 or so, and going into halftime, you knew Vanderbilt was going to strike back, being at home with the shooters they have in Jenkins. How big of a win? In my opinion, this was the biggest win of the season for Kentucky, beating Kansas, North Carolina early. I think this was the biggest win for us moving on towards SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament.
Well, no question it was the biggest win in the SEC part of the schedule. There's no doubt about that. That was a lot of – it amazed me, because it looked like Vanderbilt had really caught the momentum there at about – with about 8 minutes to go in the second half. And I was really concerned that Kentucky was going to let their youth show up. And it hasn't really showed up since, I don't know, since a long time. It's been forever, probably back in, I'm just kind of looking here, maybe back, no, I don't know. It's been just a long time. So anyway, their youth hasn't showed up in a long while. Maybe Alabama, I suppose it was, when it did a little bit.
That'd probably be about
right. But it hasn't showed up in a long time. And you know what? That's amazing to me, because these guys, as young as they are, to play like this, play together like this, and they're going to improve. So nobody should be surprised to see, things like Marcus Teague really getting, kind of into the kind of point guard group that we'd all expected them to get into. But they're going to get better, and the thing is, they just keep playing better together, and they find new ways and different ways to do things that maybe they haven't done before. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, in my opinion, what the best – I think Danielle's got something. Go.
I do have a question. I mean, kind of going on what you just said, as far as Kentucky, these young teams, they always have kind of a click factor in a way, where they click at a certain point of the season. Like last year they clicked, SEC tournament, right beginning of the NCAA tournament. It was the perfect time. This team looks like it's already clicking. Do you think it's too early? Do they need a loss? If they go in, if they go through even the SEC tournament undefeated, is that going to hurt them? Do they need a loss, in your opinion, to really succeed in the NCAA tournament?
I'm not a subscriber to the theory that losses are necessarily good. There is a point at which they can become good, which is the point at which the team becomes, cocky, begins to read its press clippings, and doesn't really kind of take opponents seriously. But this team, so far, and they had plenty of opportunities to take opponents lightly, but they just don't. And what I would begin to say to you is that, Danielle, is that they are beginning to get into what I would call a habit of winning the right way. And I think that's something that can't be overlooked. So, no, I don't think they necessarily need a loss. I might feel differently if they go, if Mississippi gives them a real tough game, because Mississippi should not be that tough. They've got some players, but at home, Kentucky has dominated everybody, and they're just much better than Mississippi is. There's just no doubt about that. So if Mississippi comes in and gives them a tough contest, maybe they will need a loss. But absent some sort of regression to what we might have expected to happen back in about the first third of the season, I think that they probably don't. I don't think a loss is going to matter one way or the other. I don't think it really helps them, and I don't think it really hurts them if they take one.
Yeah, I think we're on the same boat about a loss could help you. I totally am against that. Maybe earlier in the season, like Calipari did say about a month or so ago, this team may need to lose to get them back on track. But that is when they, I say pre-LSU game, when they were kind of struggling, if you want to say struggling. And then it's like they just clicked when Malcolm White tackled Anthony Davis. And now that they've been rolling, Calipari kind of changed his mood over the last week or so. And you can tell by his comments saying, this team's rolling, and I can see he doesn't want them to lose now. I will agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's funny because if you think back, there was that time, Alabama, Tennessee, in that area right there, where they were having a little bit of, they were winning, but they weren't winning big. They weren't winning particularly convincingly. And even when they did win by double digits, it was in the barely in the double digits or whatnot against teams that were markedly inferior. So, yes, I think that what you said is exactly correct.
So going into the closing in on the end of the season, what is UK's weakness right now? Can you see that might hurt them coming into, March?
Well, their weaknesses, I would say that they have one, and I suppose they do to an extent, is susceptibility to a poor officiating crew that calls touch fouls. I mean, Kentucky has been in its most difficult positions when we got into some foul trouble, especially Anthony Davis. Now, Anthony Davis hasn't been in foul trouble in a very long time. He's averaging under 3 fouls a game, which for a center is it's ridiculous. I mean, it just almost doesn't make any sense. But, you know, the thing that worries me about that is that you will see some games called. We've even seen a few sort of phantom fouls crop up in the Vanderbilt game. I mean, there were several calls that were really phantom, and it would let me scratch my head considering that, you know, how the game was called. So what worries me is, and this is their weakness, and this is like everybody's weakness, it almost boils down to a luck factor. Because if you get the wrong officiating crew or they get unsighted but they think they see Anthony Davis make a couple of cheapies early, you know, Kentucky can wind up in a ball game. And if Anthony Davis is not in this team is a completely different team with Anthony Davis out of the game. And I don't think you have to worry about that too much really late in the season, like in the Final Four, because the officials tend to be a little more careful about making sure the game doesn't get, you know, they don't call ridiculous fouls. But at the same time, I do think you have to worry about it up until that point. And while we don't really care, you know, for Kentucky, if they lose their close game to a team on the road, it's not going to hurt their seed one iota. But if they were to lose, you know, I don't know, to Mississippi on the last second shot, that may not hurt their seed, but it certainly would put them in a little bit more of a concerned position. They'd need to win the SEC tournament to be really positive of one seed. They wouldn't want to take a second loss after losing a game like that.
I will totally agree. Again, we have Glenn Logan on from AsiaBlue.com. You can check out his Twitter at AsiaBlue. Not to get off the basketball, just change the subjects real quick before we do let you go. T. Martin is leaving UK and heading to USC for the wide receiver coach. Did you see this coming? Did you know anything about this, or it surprised us? Did it surprise you as much?
It didn't really surprise me. There's been lots of rumors swirling around that people were looking at him pretty hard for they had bigger programs than us. And it's hard to blame a guy like that for leaving Kentucky for USC. I mean, that's a big time program. It's a stepping stone to a head coaching job at a major school eventually, and it's a thing you really like to have. It's like Notre Dame. I mean, if Notre Dame comes calling to one of our assistants, that guy's going to leave. I don't care who it is. I mean, it's just going to happen. So, honestly, I think it's really a credit to Kentucky to have him as long as we did. He did a good job, especially recruiting, and I'm sure recruiting is one of the big things. Although they've got such they've got such a wealth of players over in that area, and they get a lot of them. I suppose, when I say recruiting's a thing, I suppose it is, although I'm not really sure, because his battlegrounds are a little bit different than where they're normally recruiting from. But anyway, long story short is, I wasn't surprised. Was I disappointed? A little bit. I like T. Martin, but I wasn't in love with the guy. I mean, he was a good coach, but it's not as if losing him is suddenly going to cripple Kentucky. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there, saying it's a credit to UK him going to USC and being one of the best programs over the last, one of the best programs in general. So I will think that's a good point. I haven't actually heard that yet, but I guess we'll go ahead and we got to hit a commercial break. Glenn, we really do appreciate you coming on. We would like to get you on maybe around March again when Cats are heading to number 8.
Anytime, guys. I really do appreciate it. John, Danielle, Tyler, appreciate it. Thanks.
You have a great night, Glenn.
Have a good one, Glenn.
You too, man.
Again, that was Glenn Logan from AsiaBlue.com. A good guy.
Check out his
nice
site.
Guy.
They have a lot of other bloggers on there. They have a lot of neat stuff. So check that out.
Good stuff on there. We'll be right back with some more UK UVL talk and a little bit of L1C4.